What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and we have been gifted with yet another data set of gold from our friends over at TCG Player. And you know how much I love when I get information straight from TCG Player. The volume of buying and selling on their website is absolutely out of control. So whenever I'm trying to understand what's going on in the hobby at a macro level, and they provide me with information, I think that is a very, very good indicator as to what's going on. And this is an even better data set. This is not just from last week or last month. This is from all of 2024. And these are the best-selling Pokemon singles from the entire year on TCG Player, but not in terms of number of sales. Instead, this is in turn by the total dollar amount sold, which is really, really interesting to me. And I love the way TCG Player describes it in that white box down below. They say, consider this the poll for the most popular Pokemon card of the year, where participants had 12 months to vote and they voted with their wallet. These are the cards where people splashed the most cash and the most dollars were exchanging hands. And to me, when I think about all of that, these indicate some of the very best investments from 2024, and for most of them, I will say 9 of the 10 cards on this list, I think some of the very best investments for the future. Now, 2024 was an incredible year. A lot of these cards, we're going to see a bunch of Sword and Shield cards on here, some alt art, some really, really amazing pieces of art on here. But a big learning for me was that I don't know if we know or understand what the ceiling is for these ultra modern singles cards. In the very beginning of my journey, I used to look at some of these older sets. I'd look at Jungle First Edition, Fossil First Edition, all of these other really great iconic sets from the early age of Pokemon collecting, and I would see how many cards they had up over the $100 mark, and I would say, well, if these epic legendary sets don't have that many cards up over $100 mark, can these ultra modern sets support it? But the market is cyclical. Right now, ultra modern is where it's at. I do believe at some point in the future, no time soon, but I do believe in the future, those older legacy sets will kind of turn the corner, and I think we'll start to see them pop off in price. But right now, the awesome artwork that we have, the amazing Pokemon that we have on those artworks, like the amazing sets we have, all of the excitement around the hobby, like everything is turning up aces for ultra modern. And so we're gonna look at these. And the cool thing about this video too is it's not just gonna share with you the journey the card has been on over the last year, but they're gonna include the average sale price for each one of these over the course of the year. And for me, that's really cool because we'll see where it started, we'll see when it's ended, and understanding the average price throughout the course of the year. Again, it's just another awesome lesson. And that's what this channel is all about, and that's what I always try and do. I try and bring black and white data to the YouTube space, and we can talk about it and pontificate on it all we want to, but at the end of the day, the data is what it is. So with that out of the way, we're gonna jump into the 10 cards that had the highest total sales volume on TCG Player in 2024. But before I do, if you get into the video and you're having fun, hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. We do a ton of fun stuff on this channel, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. So with that out of the way, let's start kicking this off. And of course, I am pumped because number 10 on the list is one of my absolute favorites from the Sword and Shield era. You all know I am a huge Gengar fan. I am a huge fan of the artwork on this card. I'm a huge Fusion Strike fan. And this card has had one heck of a run. And if you look all the way in the beginning of January 2024, this card was kind of plugging along at $200. Then we saw the broader market went on a bit of an accelerated path, right? We saw a lot of these cards spike in price, and we'll talk about this a lot throughout the course of the video. This will apply to almost all the Sword and Shield cards we're looking at. But, the booster boxes finally started to sell out at the Pokemon Center. Sword and Shield was kind of on its last song, and it was starting to fade away. Scarlet and Violet was becoming more prominent. And so we saw the market react in a very feverish manner. We saw a lot of these Sword and Shield alt arts spike up in price, and then on the other side of that, we saw it cool down and the prices start to come down. But what's really interesting to me and what's really important and what's a huge lesson, we'll talk about this throughout a couple data-driven videos we have coming up, is you see that even though it dropped, the high on the other side is higher than the previous high, right? That's what markets do. Rarely does anything move in a straight line, either up or down. You'll have it when it peaks, then you'll have it come back down, then you'll have it where it peaks again. And the goal is that those peaks are continually higher. It's kind of like climbing stairs, right? It goes up, it goes flat, it goes down, all of that. But as you're climbing up over time, the aggregate, it continues to build upon itself. And that's what we saw here with the Gengar, and that's what we're going to see with a lot of other cards here on the list. So again, a stunning card from an amazing set, and I just think this was a great way to kick off the video because I'm a huge Gengar fan, and I love that it sets the premise for a lot of the other patterns we're going to see throughout the course of this video. So the next card right here on the list, coming in at number 9, was the Lugia. And you know, we have been saying for a long time that we don't know what the Lugia is capable of, simply because the Silver Tempest booster boxes were in stock here in the US Pokemon Center for so incredibly long. It got to the point where I was scratching my head and I was like, what is going on with this? Like, is it either where nobody likes Silver Tempest, or did they just print so much Silver Tempest that it won't seem to disappear on the Pokemon Center? Well, it finally did sell out, and now the card has started to absolutely climb in price. It's up over $250. And you can see for most of the year, the average sale price here from top to bottom was $168. And when you think about some of the other video series that we do on this channel, we do the top 10 Pokemon singles every single month, and those are the cards that sell the most in volume terms from TCG Player. Those month-to-month views are really important to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the hobby. And cards like this Lugia that were on there month after month after month, you just knew that there was so much interest and so much excitement around this card. You knew it was just a matter of time before it started to break out. And that's what we're starting to see right now. So it's all the way up over $250 right now. And I'm really interested because I do think out of all the cards, this one probably has the most legs behind it. So we'll see where it gets going here in the next 6 to 12 months. Coming in at number 8 was the only card on the list that I don't necessarily consider a long-term investment card. This is Prime Catcher. Obviously, this is a huge card in terms of playability, but what was really fascinating to me, and I want you to think about this, remember, this list is composed of the cards in terms of dollars paid, like the whole sales volume for the course of 2024. And when you think about Prime Catcher, like, you can only have one of these per deck. I would imagine that there's not a lot of people out there who care to have 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of Prime Catcher, right? You get one of these in your deck each time. It's an A spec. I don't even play the game, right? I am strictly in this as a collector. And even I know that you can only have one A spec in your deck. And yet think about that at a price point of $23, where most of these cards that we're looking at, which are in the, you know, 200, 300, 400 and beyond price range, to come in at number 8, that is incredible. Now the price has dropped significantly. It's down to $9.10. It was up at a high of $35, and this one has been dropping throughout the course of the year. But again, for me, it was just really interesting to try and conceptualize how many of these cards must have actually been sold, and to how many unique collectors and players out there to make it on this list, being with the fact that only one can go in a deck at a time. It's just absolutely crazy for me to think about. Then coming in at number 7 right now, you know how excited I get when we see OG cards on here, and this is obviously the king of them all, the 1999 base set Charizard card. The average sale price throughout the course of the year was $198.88. Now, what I did was I filtered this just for the near mint version, because here, when we're talking about investing in things, we obviously want the highest quality card we can get. So I filtered the graph here for near mint, and you can see even then, we went through a 4 or 5 month period where this near mint card was hovering right around $350. It had come down just shy of like $375 in the beginning of the year, and then it sat. It just sat and sat and sat at $350. And in the past, we have seen, and if you watch this channel enough, you know that when we find these really strong support lines over a long period of time, traditionally in time, they tend to break out, and that's what we've seen. Now, the broader market is obviously performing really well, and I think a lot of people are trying to find value, and I certainly think buying this card in a near mint condition at $442, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty great value. So maybe that's why we're seeing it pop off. But just really exciting to see this card again, the OG, the best of the best, the king of them all here on the list. Really cool to see it on here, and it just gets me excited. The next card that's on the list is the Giratina, another one of my absolute favorite cards from the Sword and Shield era. And you know I'm a huge fan of Lost Origin. I think Lost Origin has an incredibly deep set of cards that's on it. It's not just the Giratina at the top. It's not just the Aerodactyl up there, right? You got Pikachu. Like, you have a great list of cards that is supporting Lost Origin. But that's not the reason why this card is doing what it is, right? First of all, it's got amazing artwork. But second of all, out of all of these awesome cards we're going to see, this has one of the lowest gem rates of them all. So in Sword and Shield era, the VMAXs, which you're going to see a ton of as we go throughout this video, the VMAXs, the way the art kind of blends into the borders, those have a much easier grade when it comes to getting the centering perfect in terms of PSA. Now this Giratina right here, it has the silver going all the way around, which makes it much more prevalent when the centering is off. So you find this one has a gem rate right in the high 40s, low 50% range. And when we talk about some of these other VMAXs, VMAX cards, those are in the high 60, low 70. So you're talking about a 20% delta in terms of gem rate for the Giratina versus a lot of these other really awesome cards. And I think that's going to help buoy this card in the long run. I think when you think about how low the PSA 10 population for this card is going to be 5, 10, 15 years down the road, even versus the Umbreon, right? The big Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, like the PSA 10 pop on that, last I checked, was it like 14,000 or something like that? This card is going to be about half that much. So lots going for it. Awesome art, awesome set. And again, I think this is a great card with a lot of room to run in the long run. Next card on the list is the Greninja EX. My gosh. Now, again, I want you to think about that. Think about this card wasn't even out the entire year, and yet it ended up number 5 on the list. That just goes to show you how much money people were spending on this Greninja EX from Twilight Masquerade throughout the course of the year. I mean, it was 3 or 4 months short of all of these other cards, yet it still finished in the top 5. And I will admit, and I've admitted this many, many times on this video, I did not see this card coming. I thought it would be a great card, but I certainly didn't think this was going to be, coming in at $340 at this point, but it just goes to show you, doesn't matter what I think. It's another card though. The gem rate on this is relatively high. We talked about having the silver borders all the way around. They seem to have gotten that right. This has a much higher gem rate than the Giratina from Lost Origin, but it's starting to flatten out a little bit. But every time this card has either started to flatten out or started to decrease in price, in full transparency, in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, here we go. Here's where it is. Here's where the Giratina starts, or the Greninja starts to drop. Here's where people start to lose interest in it. And every single time I have been dead wrong. The market just soaks it up. It goes up in price. So who knows how high the ceiling is for this card, but really cool again to think about the shorter time frame, yet it still finished number 5 throughout the course of 2024. Next card on the list is one that did have a full year, but it didn't get a lot of love till the very end of the year. This is the Bubble Mew from Paldean Fates, and look at that price graph. I mean, this was a $60, $70 card for almost the entire year. And the one thing I think we should all take away from this, and this is a fantastic lesson, is remember I always share with you, the bright blue line represents how the price has changed over the course of the year. The light blue bars, those represent the number of sales. So you will see the sales volume for this card has been incredibly strong, incredibly high throughout the whole course of the year. And we talk about one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in determining the value for a Pokemon card is demand, right? It's not tied to anything. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. It's got to have awesome art. I think it's got to have a big name Pokemon at the top. It certainly helps if it comes from a wildly popular set, but at the end of the day, sales volume is what matters. And look, this thing was just crushing. I mean, we're talking 100 sales, 120 sales per week. I mean, this thing was just moving and shaking throughout the whole course of the year, tons of demand, and then all of a sudden over the last 3 months, this thing absolutely popped off. It got up to about $300 at one point. It did drop a little bit, and again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, are we going to start to see the Bubble Mew come back down to earth? No freaking way. Again, it hits that support line. You see where it flattens out, starts to get support again, starts to pop back up, and now it is flattening out again, but we'll have to see. $285 on an average sale price for the entire year of $107. That just goes to show you how long it was holding that $70, $75, $80 mark before it finally popped off. So just an incredible card, and I'm a huge fan of Paldean Fates altogether. I still think that there's some really awesome value in there in a lot of those baby shiny cards. So coming in at number 3 right now, another one from Paldean Fates. As I said, huge fan of the set. You got the Charizard. Now, at least this one went through some semblance of the Pokemon pop and flop that we used to see all the time back in the Sword and Shield era, right? We would see a new set come out, the chase card would start off super high, as more product of that was ripped, as more of those singles were introduced into the hobby, and the demand was met, the price would work its way down over time. A lot of these Scarlet and Violet singles, they're just not following that same pattern. We did a deep dive video into that the other day. They are coming out at a certain price point and either holding it or even going up in the short run. It is just unbelievable. It doesn't matter that more are ripped and more are put into the hobby because people are sitting there with open arms waiting to buy them. Now this one, as I said, it started off at about 160, popped up to 180, immediately dropped down to the $100 price point, and it held 100 for almost the entire year. Another one where you see the average sale price was $122, and now it has worked all its way back up to $185. Again, another card that I think this card has a lot of room to run. I think this is a stunning card from an incredible set. And when you think about specialty sets, there's no booster boxes out there, right? Like, you know how I'm a huge fan of the Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer boxes in any way, shape, or form, but especially for the specialty sets since they don't have those booster boxes available. So I think this is a really cool card, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch over the course of 2025 to see what happens from a pricing perspective. Now, coming in at number 2, another card, another Charizard that for the bulk of the year, my gosh, was just flying under the radar, and I still to this day don't understand how. You got the Sunzard from 151. We all knew 151 was the set of the Scarlet and Violet era up to that point. We all knew that the print quality was pretty much trash. The overall gem rate for that set is 40%, and we've got the Charizard, so obviously the biggest card from one of the biggest sets from the Scarlet and Violet era, really low gem rate, and yet none of that mattered because it was just plugging along at $100 for almost the entire year. When you look at that average sale price for 2024 coming in at $132. And then what happened? For whatever reason, people realized how awesome this was. I think as we get closer and closer, as 151 starts to get more and more age behind it, and as we have more exciting sets that are coming out, which are driving a lot of love into the single space, I think we see cards like this really start to gain some momentum. So all the way up to $230 right now, and I think this has more room to run. I don't know what else to say. It's got a really low gem rate, it's Charizard, it's from 151. Like, I think you can do far worse than finding a way to spend $220 and spending it on this Charizard card. Even though you can never live in hindsight, even though for most of the year it was a $100 card, I still think this is a pretty fantastic value sitting at $230 if you're in this for the very, very long run. So coming in at number 1, which will come as no surprise to anybody out there, is the card that just won't quit, and that's the Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, and it is at $1,500 right now. But think about this. I'm shooting this video right after Prismatic Evolutions launched, and the Prismatic Evolution Special Illustration Rare Moonbreon, or Umbreon, is almost at the exact same price. So it is absolutely wild to think that that brand new one from Prismatic Evolutions is almost at the same price as the Moonbreon, which is from the biggest set from the Sword and Shield era, and this was the card. It is the card. It is one of the most amazing cards that have come out in recent memory. Like, irregardless of era, it doesn't matter. And when you look at the price graph here, again, another fantastic example of where it was working its way up. It kind of gradually worked. You don't see that big peak because, again, this was the big chase card of the era. It just acts differently. These big cards, they are going to somewhat follow the market, but I promise you they will always perform on their own because they're just a whole different entity. And you see, it went up with the market. It came down just a little bit. Nothing like we've seen on the other cards. Flattened out for a while, and then it's just absolutely been taking off. I do think the Prismatic Evolution hype is helping to drive this card, but I have no idea how high this thing can go. I really don't. And look at it. The average price for 2024 was just shy of $900. Absolutely incredible. This has been an incredible list of cards to talk about. If you can't tell, I am fired up about each and every one of them, all for different reasons. I think these are going to be kind of the core nucleus from a lot of different investment perspectives moving forward. And it's going to be interesting to see what singles cards do. As I said, they've been hotter than they traditionally have coming out of the gate, and it'll be interesting to see if they can hold on to that momentum, especially if we have, you know, it's going to be interesting what Journey Together does, and then obviously we have a Team Rocket set coming out. I think 2025 is going to be an amazing year, and I can't wait to be along with you guys every single step of the way. So I hope you had a ton of fun. I hope you find value in it, and if you did, we do fun stuff like this all the time, so if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, why don't you think about doing it and giving us a thumbs up while you're at it. I hope you have a great one. I appreciate you so much. Talk to you later, everybody. Bye.